And it's amazing how people pursue a lifestyle because they want to be free. I want to be free to do what I want to do. And you know what it leads to? Bondage. Rather than trusting God and loving God and doing what God says to do, and you find out that it leads to peace and freedom. The greatest degree of peace and freedom that a human being can possibly experience is when they are under God's government. Now, that doesn't mean in a fallen world that you will have absolute peace and absolute freedom. You will not. But the greatest degree of peace and freedom that can be experienced is when you are under God's government, God's care, and in right relationship with God. Legal religion requires a bribe, and that sort of goes back to, maybe what we were talking about in regards to having people attend training sessions like this. You have to bribe them to get them there. All a person needs in order to modify their behavior and proceed differently when they are effectively lined up with God and are under the gospel is truth. You're seeking and hungering for truth and righteousness. And when that truth is present, you begin to modify yourself to line up with truth. And so one side here represents what should be kind of a snapshot of the gospel. If indeed we have responded to the gospel as the gospel, it should produce these realities and these motivating factors. People who have simply embraced a legal religion need and are under the government of these other things. The reality of this concept is a huge scriptural idea. It's been present in God's communications to the human race for a long time. And He's been attempting to lay the foundation and prepare the soil for people to actually see and understand and embrace the gospel and be set free from the need for legal religion. But all too often we've missed it. And all too often those who are preaching and proclaiming the gospel inadvertently preach and proclaim a legal transaction. We need to rise up and do everything we can to help the church experience renewal and revival and reformation and restoration and become what God deserves it to be. It's one of the most valuable things you can do with your life, because it is the church that has been given the commission to go make disciples of all the nations. And if the church isn't healthy, then when are we going to fulfill the Great Commission? So in order to honor God, we need to get the church healthy so that we can fulfill the Great Commission as an expression of love for God. It's Him sending us out to clean up the backyard. Our task is to put things in their proper place. There is a proper place for legal government. But it cannot be the whole picture. And that's where we've gone wrong, is we've taken legal government and we have not seen the fact that God has transcended it. And so instead of our transcending it with Him, we've just taken what He's said and we've put it within this legal system. Now, in the family, and this principle, this concept, has to be understood to apply across the board. You mentioned the family, you mentioned our educational systems, you mentioned going off to work, our business systems. Remember what we talked about earlier is this idea that God has principles and structures and procedures for the educational system. You kick God out, and all the educational system will ever offer your kids is information that is founded on legal concepts. You do good on your test, you get a reward. You do bad on your test, you get a punishment. So the idea for doing good or bad on your test is not because there's value in having knowledge and in having truth. The reason for doing good on your test is to get an A. And consequently, 2 weeks later, what about the information that you got the A from? It's gone. Because the focus is not on the value of truth. The focus is on the value of getting a good mark. That is a legal system. Is that all that God wants in His educational system? No. Consequently, again, to bring balance back into society, we have to transcend, not get rid of, but transcend legal approach. And that's what a parent is supposed to do with a child. When a child is born, how much external control do they need in their lives? Almost total. You see? But the job of a parent is not to maintain that. And so you end up with a 20-year-old and a 30-year-old who needs high degree of The job of a parent is to say, okay, I need to systematically reduce the amount of external they need and systematically increase the amount of internal government they have. So that I wean them off of a legal system and I introduce them to an internal, quote, gospel or love system. Educational system, the same way. You start a kid off in kindergarten, then the reward and punishment issue is huge. But you're not supposed to keep it there. You have to have a strategy for decreasing the reward and punishment aspect and increasing the love for knowledge, the love for truth, the love for mankind, the love for whatever. On the business front, why do you think we have such rotten employees in most businesses? Because they are there for the reward and the punishment. If they can get away without working and still get the same amount of reward, good. What kind of employee is that? How effectively can you run your business when you have those kind of employees? But you know, in order to have good employees, you need to have good families. In order to have good educational systems, you need to have good families. You need to have parents who have an understanding of this very concept we're talking about. In order to have good churches, we need to understand these concepts. You see? So yes, the legal thing is real. And we're never going to try to get away with it, away from it. But we want to keep it in its right place.